I'm hitting the button, but it's not. There we go. Can you see the screen okay?
Yep.
Okay. So what I thought I'd do is I just go through it, and I'm going to start just part one. That's exploring the face of this. So most of you know this is where you enter the calls over here on the left side. You tell it what to do, you hit enter. The dancers represented on the screen will do what you want to do. In the center is your visual box. These are the dancers that you've got represented in a static square. They've got numbers, colors, and you can adjust all of those. And down here, I've got it set on fast, but you can have it at normal. And what this does is it will give you the count as per. Sorry, somebody say something there? No? It will give you the count as per the definition, and it adds up the counts. That's something to be very careful with. Don't rely on it 100%. You've got to have your collared knowledge as well. On the right side is all your indications and settings, which you see in the settings tab down here below. So you can change your formations, and those are the various formations that you have: facing couple, squared set. We've had normal lines, zero box, and notice the terminology is old terminology. That's a zero box, which is a box, man on the left, girl on the right, in a 8-chain formation. It's also a corner box, but that's not what the definition is referring to. Double pass through, ocean waves, two-phase lines, diamonds, quarter tag, tidal waves, and blocks for the advanced callers. And more formations will come up as you go. There's about 15 to 19 standard formations through the Plus program. And then as you get further, there's more formations that are added to that. You can set your dancer speed to be slow. We'll just set that back to a static square. So if we set it to slow, that way you can actually track the dancers. Let's go heads, lead, right, circle to a line. And you notice the dancers are moving quite slow. This is useful sometimes when you're trying to analyze the body flow of the dancers. And if you want to see where they are they going around in circles? Are they moving across the square? You can click on each individual dancer, and it will show you the track that that dancer made. She went forward, around, and over that way. And it will do that for each individual dancer. And you can turn them off, turn them on that way. So you notice this person here has gone around in a circle. And at the end of your choreographic sequence, if all you have is this dancer going around in a circle, you may want to check the flow of your movement. You just put it back to normal. You've got grids on or grid off, paths on or paths off. And that's all paths. And like I said, you can add the paths on, or you can select the individual. Dancers you can set by couple. So here you see all the couples have different colors. Do random selection if you want to practice your sight calling. Or you could have nothing, all grayed out. You can change the color. You can set the colors, or you can just right click on each individual dancer and change their color. I like mine white. My number one couple white, so I'm going to put my number one couple white. Okay. Dancer shapes. They can all be square, or they can be boy-girl. And that's useful when you're looking at your choreographic sequencing and formation management, because it makes you think, okay, what can I call? Am I using boys or girls as a reference too much? Do I know what's going on? How can I track my dancers? If you're a mental image caller, that's a really good way of doing it. There's all sorts of little tools in there, and as you play with them. Dancer identification, no numbers. That makes you remember who's what. So, and if you go random colors and square your set, and you really have to start thinking about it. You can have couple numbers, you can have dancer numbers. or you can input their names. Some callers use this to actually program their choreography, and they practice that way. Let's just go back to numbers. This bit here on copy, join calls with semicolon or new line. So I'm just going to write a sequence. Heads square through, swing through, boys run, Ferris wheel, centers pass. Okay. So what happens is when you copy it, how that pastes, Control N, that's a new document. Come on, get up there. Having a little issue here, of course. Anyway, let's try this. Now, I'll do it easier. It's not doing what I want it to do, obviously. So let's just reopen Taminations. So if I paste, notice it's set on new line. If I do it with a semicolon, copy. If I paste it, it's joined by a semicolon or it's joined by a comma. Where this is useful is if you're writing choreography or you're doing notes, or if you're doing, like I work on behind the mic sometimes, checking choreography. I can check the choreography here. I can write it out. I can copy it. So I've got consistent formatting all the way through with the right commands, the right everything in. It allows me to save a lot of time, check the work. Yes, it works, copy, and I can just paste it into a Word document. So that's the settings bar. Any questions on the settings bar? Okay, good. The next part that's important is the instructions. That's all found in the Help tab. And this is one thing that a lot of callers overlook. So it's a basic sequence of instructions, and it tells you how to do things. These are all hyperlinked. So if you want to have details on entering calls, okay, it recognizes common symbols such as to or two, the number two or the word written to, through or through. Those are things that Brad has got in because, of course, we have Canadian, we have English, we have American, we have German, we have everybody. It does not recognize centers with C-E-N-T-R-E like everybody in the world spells except for the US, but that's fine. We can all adapt to that. And there's a few other things like that. It does not accept things like everybody do something when it's not a standard definition. Those are things like gimmick calls. But as you note what he says here, you can bypass those by saying everybody or enter the trade the wave, which has the exact same effect. And then you put in brackets, everybody cross run, because that's what you want to call as a caller. So when you copy it and paste it, you just delete the trade the wave and the brackets around everybody cross run. Multiple calls separated by commas or lines or cool. Okay, and then you can go back to the instructions, and it has details on all of them, how to copy and paste, how to deal with abbreviations, special calls to adjust. So let's say you're in an offset line, you can just say adjust to a line. If you're not sure, click on it. It says adjust to a, and then you give the formation line. Square the set. These are various things that he's programmed in because it allows you to put the dancers where you want them, where the dancers would normally be, because the computer doesn't always recognize what a dancer would normally do in that situation. You can select dancers, boys, girls, leaders, trailer. All the normal things that you would call as a caller will work. You can call with parts or other modifications, and it gives you what to do, like square through, do the nth hand of, finish the call with, finish with, boom. In other words, skip the first part and finish. Of course, that's a higher level concept there. Reverse order, higher level concepts. And most of these are higher level concepts. You can modify calls. Those who can, do your part, like heads, do your part, load the boat, and so on and so forth. And you can do half circulate or do-si-do once and a half, once space 1/2, or 1.5. It'll recognize most of those kinds of things. There are a lot of things it doesn't recognize yet, and we'll talk about what to do when you have those. And there's a quick blurb on how everything works, what it can do, and what it cannot do. And what it cannot do is the important part of this. It can only do what you find in Taminations, what's been programmed into the computer. It will not do a do-si-do from an ocean wave because there's no animation for that in the computer. I don't know if it does that yet. Heads, they're off. Touch. Okay, there's our wave, do-si-do. No, see, and it doesn't recognize that. Even though you know the dancers can do it, it doesn't recognize it. And this becomes an issue sometimes when you're doing things like a wrong way grand, because that ends with the right hand joined. What are you going to do on the next call? If you were going to do a wrong way grand, meet your partner do-si-do once and a half to the corner, a la man left, it will not recognize that because the end of the formation, the end of the movement ends in a mini wave, and it doesn't recognize do-si-do from a wave. So those are things you just have to be aware of.
Jeffrey has his hand up.
Yeah, I can't see you on the screen while I'm sharing, so please say something. Yes, Jeff.
Hello, Mel. I have noticed that the English spelling of centers will read.
Does it?
Okay, give it a try sometime. But when it actually inserts it, it will change it to the American spelling.
Ah, there you go.
Yeah.
See, and that was something about 6 months ago that had been mentioned to Brad, and he's just added that into the vocabulary.
Yeah.
So
and that's that.
Yeah, and that's really how it works. If there is something that you think needs to be fixed, talk to Brad, and he'll see if he can find a way to fix it. Okay. The next thing,
Daryl wants him to get the cursor to go up to enter calls when he wants to without having to click up there. He always forgets to put the cursor up there.
I agree.
So he just wants the cursor. Like he's up here explaining something. He wants the cursor to go there. Okay. Well, what he does, he just goes reset and click. Just tell him to hit reset and click on the word enter, and it'll go up there. Of course, he'll lose everything, but what the heck? Now, I have no idea. I think it's probably better that you don't, because that way you know exactly what you want to do. The next part is the call lists. Okay, this is something that a lot of callers forget about, or they just tick everything. I strongly recommend that you only use the movements that you are using. So if you're only calling the SSD program, only put the SSD program in there. And the reason for that is if you tick everything, there's directional concepts and things at A1, A2s, and the C program that are built into Taminations that if I tick everything in there, it will do those. And your dancers may not be able to do that. So what you should only put in there is the program that you are calling to. So if you're calling only basic 1, not SSD, put in basic 1. If you're calling basic 1 and 2, put in basic 1 and 2. Don't just put the last part because it'll only tell you what program you're in. If you say I'm calling mainstream and you click mainstream, it's going to do that, but it's only got the mainstream programs in there. If I say, I don't know.
Yeah, I understand why they do that, but unfortunately, the the programs are inclusive of the other programs. So
Yeah.
if you're
And-
calling mainstream, it includes basic 1, basic 2.
Yeah. And you notice I've only got mainstream clicked, but it includes A1. So it will have everything. This is something I thought Brad had fixed this. But he's got all of the calls programmed in here. So I'll have to mention that to him again, that you need to select what program you're actually calling to. And that's a good thing to do anyway. And it's also a good thing to do when you are programming. Let's say you're going to program a weekend workshop using the mainstream program. Let's just reset that. Click. And you notice if I turn SSD off and I turn SSD on, it increases because in the SSD program, some of these basic and mainstream calls are actually broken down into separate sections. But it gives you a good way of seeing exactly what you can call. And if it's not on that list, don't call it. Most callers are familiar with the list up to the program that they're calling on. You should be if you're going to be calling at that program. But ideally with this, I'd like to see Brad, and I've asked him about this, is to, unless you click the program, that will not show. The movements will not enter into the program. And it will limit you into what you can do and cannot do. It also, like, for instance, if I do Alaman left in the Alamo style, swing through again, and I want to follow that with a box to nat, the computer won't recognize that because it's not in the right formation to do a box to nat, which is, of course, facing dancers. I have to tell the computer quarter out to get everybody to face their partner. It's a little counterintuitive, but if I understand that definition, that would get everybody facing their partner. Then I could call box to nat wrong way grand. But if I don't call A1 and I turn that off, I have to find another way of explaining that to my dancers so that they can understand it, what they want to do, and I can check it in Taminations. It makes me work harder to understand what the program I'm using can actually do. So that's essentially your list of calls. Any questions on that? Please speak up because I can't see you if you've got your hand raised. Okay. Part 4 is abbreviations. Okay. Brad has built in a lot of abbreviations. So if you look at square through 2, heads, I should be able to type heads space SQ2, and it will do heads square through 2. There is a fairly good length of abbreviations there. However, you can also add your own abbreviations. And what I'm going to do here, I personally don't like using abbreviations. I like to type it out. It just makes it retain that so much better in my head. But a lot of callers like using abbreviations. So I'm going to turn this over to Mark here to talk about abbreviations because he's done a lot more work on it than I have. So go ahead, Mark.
Oh, gee, thanks. I wasn't ready for that.
I told you I was going to do that this morning.
Yeah, I like using abbreviations. I don't know what my list is up to now, but I post it in Taminations every once in a while when I update it. The Taminations Facebook group channel that got started because I was using abbreviations, and another caller, Daryl, asked me if I could get him a copy of it. So I put it on Facebook for him, and turned out a lot of people liked using it. So, yeah, well, I don't know if that's mine or not, but
Yeah, that's yours.
okay.
I just hacked into your computer.
Okay. Basically, it's with Excel. I write them in Excel. I use the first 2 columns. The first one's the abbreviation. The second one's what Taminations would be, how you would type it in, fully typed in. I got some oddball stuff in there, like that center left swing through, 1 1/4. If you wanted to do something, that was something I see. Those oddball ones, I see people asking questions on Facebook. How do you make them do it? And so I would get in Taminations and I would make them do it, and then I would just save it to that list. Oh yeah, this is my latest one. I put all the other tabs down there at the bottom. I see SSD, Basic, Mainstream, and Plus. But those are that's so what you do is whatever you want to put into Taminations, you select all of them. You select both columns and copy it all, and then you go into Taminations.
I'm trying to get there. There we go.
And what I always do is I clear out what's the clear button down under there. I clear all that out.
You want me to do this?
Oh, it's you that we're doing it. You're up there sharing the screen. Did you copy it?
Did I copy it? No. So how do I copy it? Just
Out of Excel.
copy yours, you mean?
Yeah.
All calls, Control A, Control C. Yep.
Now go into Taminations, clear. Then paste. And now they're all in there. And then if you don't, I started doing it with Excel because Excel would let me, when I started doing this, you couldn't sort the abbreviations or columns in Tamination. And I started doing it in Excel, so I would end up being able to tell if I had 2 of them that were the same. Because when you do that, Square View will just, or not Square View, Taminations will only put the first one in and the second one it leaves out. So, and you can change them abbreviations to whatever you like. If you don't like what I have in there for right for, that's a new one I put in because they added, Taminations added where you can pick a specific group of dancers. You could pick the right 4 dancers and have just them do something. But if you didn't like it saying R4 and you prefer to say RFOUR, you could change that abbreviation to RFOUR. And if that's easier for you to remember.
Anything else to add?
No, what'd you say?
I said, do you have anything else to add?
No. I can tell you after a while, and once you get used to it, okay, the abbreviate does the copy and paste? No, that is only for your copy of Taminations. It doesn't change it for anybody else. And if I remember right, because I haven't used the web one for a long time, but the web one, I would change it on there all the time, but it's only, those abbreviations only were for me. Nobody else seen them.
Yeah, you actually have to have, you save the Taminations in, it creates a temp file for you. So every time you open Taminations, it's there. Sometimes you may have to do it 2 or 3 times to stick. It will self-educate. In abbreviations, you'll notice if you're not sure, if you go to help and abbreviations, it tells you what to do. Mark's explanation is a lot clearer than this. but you can find a list of abbreviations in the system clipboard and then add them to your current list of abbreviations. Mark is just doing it the opposite of that. You don't have to clear it. You can add to it. But as he said, if you have the same one in, it will pick up one or it'll give you an error message. So that's something that you just have to be very careful. So if, and the way it tells you that in here, when you look at the abbreviations, if I added star through as ST, I'm not sure what you have as star through
ST.
here.
ST.
ST. Yeah, and some people use ST as swing through or square through or slide through. So what had happened was you'd get ST, 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 ST. He's defined that, but he's got no ST, just all by itself. So how he does star through, I really don't know. And it depends on, you know, like split 2, SP. As long as they're all different. If you do have one that is the same, what'll happen, it'll come up highlighted in red. So you may have ST square through, ST swing through, ST star through. The first one will be in black. The other two will be in red. It says you've got to change your abbreviation for whatever that is. Now, for those of you that have been around calling, I'm not sharing the screen again, am I?
No.
Sorry, I just realized that. I'm looking at the list and I'm talking and I'm not sharing the screen. There we go. So notice, there we go. So I had square through 1, square through 2, square through 3, 4, 5, etc. Square through, but on the fourth hand, that's 4B, on the fourth hand, Alaman left. You know, all of these other kinds of things that it tells you what to do. And when you think about your abbreviation, think about the command that you want to give. Square through, but on the fourth hand, box the gnat. Oh, okay, so he's got that. Make sure you're using whatever it is that you're going to use for that regular command. So if you have box the gnat up here, somewhere up there. Okay, he uses BTG. So I would go square through 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Everybody's got the right hand free. Yeah, I checked that. Square through 4B, but, which means on the fourth hand, BTG. And that would put that sequence of calls together when you're doing the abbreviation. So you just put the space in between them. Be consistent with what you want to do. If you're going to put a long string, use what you have. That way you're not dancing back and forth. And as Mark says, the more you use it, the easier it is to remember. I personally don't like abbreviations. Some people do. But be consistent. I cannot stress that enough. If you're going to use abbreviations, it's important you standardize what abbreviations you use so they're consistent and that they make sense to you. Any questions on abbreviations? Okay, now the last part of this before we actually start playing with it is the big question. My Taminations won't do this, or how do I fix that? As I said earlier, there's an old expression that says garbage in, garbage out, and that's why we get a lot of what is happening. In Taminations, however, it's not always garbage in, garbage out. It's a matter of either I've told it to do a wrong thing, or what I wanted to do is not programmed in a way that the computer understands what the dancers want to do. So, and as I said, sometimes you have to tell it exactly what to do. Other times you have to fudge the dancers, like I was saying with the Alaman left in the Alamo style example. So you have to tell them what you want to do and fudge the action. And when you do that, just put in brackets what you plan to call, like star through, if that's what you wanted to do. And the computer doesn't recognize star through as an example. You put star through in brackets, because that's what I'm going to call to the dancers. And then you go pass through, quarter in if that's the correct formation. Great. And now I've done a star through. The dancers are where I want them to be. And then you just go back to typing in. When you copy and paste that, you'll have what you called in brackets, so it stands out to you. And then you can just go in and edit the lines to have it the way you want it. So when you do that planned call to action in brackets and followed it out with the spelled out dance directions, when you hit enter, it adds it onto the list, but it doesn't actually do anything with the dancers. So that would be in the example, I want heads to star through. Okay, and let's just say star through is not on the list. So it'll put it in brackets and I would go heads, pass through, and face in. Doesn't recognize it. Ooh. So we'll say heads, pass through.
No, it's the heads that's the problem.
Ah. The operator's head spacing. Oh, that's too far. Didn't want that. So I can undo that and I go heads, pass through. Okay, and I'll go back heads. Won't let me do that.
Should just be heads back away.
Yeah, I know what I'm doing is I'm writing things that I'm fudging the dancers. Ah, okay, that's where I wanted them to go. Now I could go heads, face in. Good. Okay, so I've now done a head start through. And so I've gone through a number of different things. I've tried things that will work. Oh, heads back away a half. No, that's not going to work. Heads back away. That works. I can do face in. I have to stay within my program. What can I do? Only on Taminations. Okay, and now I go centers pass through. Great. So when I copy this and I paste it into a document, it'll come out like this. Heads star through, that's what I wanted to call. I know that heads pass through, heads back away, and face in. That's me adjusting the dancers. So I can delete that and say heads star through, centers pass through. I can now copy that onto a piece of paper. Is that clear to everybody? Sometimes you do have to play with a number of calls to get to do what you want to do.
Yeah, Mel.
Yeah.
One other thing about that heads back away.
Yeah.
If you put it heads half back away, where you were trying to heads back away half, if you put the half in front of the back away, it works.
Back away works, heads half back away. Like I said, you may have to play with a little bit of the commands, your directional prompts that the computer understands to get them to go where you want to go. In order to do that, you as a caller have to understand the definition and the mechanics of the movement. Okay, the computer can only do what the computer is programmed to do. So you have to help it along its way sometimes. And when you see something like that, like for instance, I know star through's in there, but if it wouldn't do your star through, you can contact Brad and say, hey, Brad, I'm having a problem with the movement heads star through from this formation. It's not doing that. I had to adjust it this way. Can you fix that? And chances are by the end of the week, it'll be fixed. And he'll send you an email saying, yeah, I fixed that problem. And he'll include it with the next updates on Taminations. He's very, very active. Okay, now within that, there's also, it won't do what I want it to do. There, you need to look at things like sequential and concurrent actions. And these are very, very important things to look at. We'll just reset that. So when I say concurrent, it means doing it at the same time. When I say sequential, one thing after another. So heads if I look at sequential, I'm doing heads, star through, and pass through. So I have active dancers. Heads, star through, and pass through. So that's a command to the active dancers. And that's important to realize that, because as a caller, that's how the dancers would also react. And it's very different than heads, star through, pass through. As you'll notice, it will not allow you to do that, even though there's only one group or one pair of couples that can do the pass through. Because I'm doing it in stop time, I have to explain centers pass through. And that's where you get your concurrent. So we'll do a centers pass through. So another thing is swing through and boys trade. Okay, that's a sequential action based on the formation. I can do swing through and boys circulate and girls trade. So did anybody see what was wrong with that? And the answer is here. Okay, there's my ocean. Oops. Okay, there's my ocean wave. So if I do swing through and girls circulate and boys trade. Okay. He's corrected this for some concurrent actions, obviously. Generally, what it is when you have consecutive actions, the timing is each action because they are done one after the other. The concurrent activity, swing through, girls circulate while boys trade, means those actions are happening at the same time. Your timing will only take, and good examples of that are heads promenade while the sides square through 4. Well, that's going to take 10 beats of music to do that, because sides, but it won't show that way because the computer has a concurrent action. If I'm doing the heads promenade, the sides go in and back as part of that action. So I have to recognize that as part of the computer. And I have to say, heads go forward and back, square through 4. And it's going to do that forward and back action as part of the promenade. And then it's going to do the square through 4. And it's going to add that 10 beats of music it takes to do the square through, which of course is now 18 beats of music instead of 10 beats of music used. So you just have to be aware of that with your timing. Is that clear to everybody? Yes, I can't see you, so somebody please acknowledge me.
Yes, clear.
Okay. Now, for different types of choreography, let's say a very common one, Jerry used to do this a lot. He'd get into facing line, say, boys step forward and swing through, boys back away. Now I've just changed the line. Then do girls step ahead, left swing through, and girls back away. And now I'm back in a different kind of line. So let's just look at that for a second here. Paste that. Okay, let's undo that. We'll paste that. We'll take that dot away. There we go. So you can't say boys step forward, because if you do a boys step forward or boys go forward, they end up going right past each other because they go to the next position. So this is what Mark was saying, half step. So if I do this, circle to a line. Okay, so what I want is the boys to step forward, make a wave, swing through, and then the boys to back up. I say boys half step forward, they make it, swing through, and they back away. And you can, if you think about what you want the dancers to do, most of the time you can find out what you want Taminations to do. The next thing is if you're doing something like a sequence of calls, a lot of people used to have a lot of problem with what do I do with separate around one? It won't come into the middle and make a line. And the reason was, reset. You would say things like heads pass through, that's one movement. Separate, that's a movement. Come into the middle, you go around one, but I want you to come into the middle, then I got to do quarter in and then put trailers in to make a line. You don't have to do that. You think about how you would say it to the dancers, and you could say things like heads pass through, separate around one and come into the middle. Centers make centers step to a wave. That's how I would call that. Separate around one, come into the middle. That's a full action. Centers step to a wave. So it's two concurrent, it's a concurrent action, a sequence of flows followed by concurrent action. If I did that as separate commands, because separate is a command, walk around one, come into the middle, that's a directional prompt. If I say around one to a line, they would make a line. So just think about what you want to say. And you can do that like even from here. Heads separate. And then you want them to go around one and into the middle. So you say around one. I'll use the number this time. And I'll go back and spell around properly. My computer has a speech impediment. Around and into the middle. And that tells the other dancers to adjust accordingly. And have fun playing with that feature. Now, the last thing I wanted to show you was asymmetric stuff. A lot of callers are saying, oh, you can't use Taminations for asymmetric choreography and all of that. This is one thing that Brad has been working with. So if I go to back to the help, calls, abbreviations, special commands. No, he doesn't have it in there, but he has got it set up. Let's reset. You can do some asymmetric choreography. So let's just say I wanted to have couples 1 and 4 half sachet. Okay, now my square is asymmetric. Okay, I can do from here heads lead right. Okay, now I can't do a circle to a line because the definition of circle to a line will not let me do circle to a line. I can't have the girl turning under the arch. Okay, I don't believe it will do it. Oh, yes, it will, because they have corrected that. So you see the boy turning under the arch, number 7, dancer number 7 there. I'll put back a couple numbers. But let's just undo that. That would probably break down a good portion of your floor. But you could do things like veer left, couple circulate, bend the line, star through. Okay, now I'm in a weird and wonderful situation. This is not working. As Mark was saying, you can do those who can pass through. That will work. Okay, let's have everybody face in. Star through. Centers pass through. Why didn't that work?
They can't pass through when they're back to back. But thanks for playing.
Ah, thanks for playing. Absolutely. Okay, what do I got here? Face in, star through.
Notice everybody's symmetrical again, by the way.
Yeah. Okay, start. Put on third hand, swing. Ignore the fact that was left hand. The right hand was free. And square the sets. I don't know why it's not adjusting to square the set. That should take everybody home, but it's not. But as you see, the point I'm getting across is you can set things up asymmetrical. You can do couple 1 half sachet and just play with it that way. Okay, you can do all sorts of different things. Your formations are a bit weird. Not a big issue. As long as you're calling movements that all the dancers can do, like from here, everybody can do a left swing through. Everybody can do a, you know, A, B, C, and D. From this particular thing, we can't do girls run, but we can do a centers run. So you just change those things accordingly. The one thing he did fix recently was Alamand left in the Alamo style. This works now because they got the ways you can do the swing through, but you cannot end it with a box the nat because it doesn't recognize that from that formation. Doesn't do a do-si-do after a wrong way grand because it ends with the hands joined. That's a mini wave. It doesn't recognize that. It still doesn't do head square through 4, make a right hand star, head star left in the middle. Some people have found workarounds. They don't always work around, but that's something he's working on. The important thing is if you have an issue with a specific movement, such as the make a right hand star and then head star left in the middle, contact Brad Christie. He looks after it. He's the one that did all the programming. It's like if you have a problem with Hilton, contact Dick Bull. If he can't sort you out, he'll point you to someone that will. If you've got an issue with how to speak Australian, contact Jeff or Roz, and they'll send you a phrase book that any American coming to Australia can use, because that phrase book, all it does is give you a whole bunch of slang expressions that no self-righteous Australian would ever use, but it makes the tourists look more like idiots than they already are. My wife did that to me when I moved here. So, you know, there's all things. There's always a solution for what it is you want to do. There's always somebody around the corner to help. Mark, I know this is your session, and I want to say thank you very much for taking over and hosting these sessions. It has been absolutely fantastic. But also Mark has been working a lot with abbreviations, talking with Brad. A lot of callers do it. And like callers that have been caller coaches for over 60 years, like Daryl Clendenin, have contacted Mark to say, can I get your list of abbreviations? Because that will really help me to do this, because a lot of the old callers are coming into the technology. A lot of new callers are not moving checkers. Taminations is a tool. Use it as a tool. It will never replace the functionality of checkers. But it is a good tool and it's getting better. And I know a lot of callers that have started calling and have never even heard of checkers. They've gone right to Taminations. It's
So
unfortunate.
just one question there, Mel.
Yeah.
When you export the information from the sequencer, are you able to export them in the format of the abbreviations, or does it do
No.
does it do the full version?
No, it does
Yeah,
the
'cause-
full version.
Yeah, because I know a lot of, I'll call them older school callers. They've got their little tiny cards that they have that they read
Yep.
from. And because they're tiny cards, they created a shorthand for how they write their cards out. And so in doing so, you would think that if they wanted to use this tool, it would be very handy for them to be able to write out their cards the way they like to write out their cards using their shortcuts.
There are ways to do that. If you go back and behind the mic, you'll see a list of abbreviations and whatnot, as well as color coding that was developed by Barry once and way back when, before any of this started up, and that eventually became the color index, the abbreviations index for all these things. But the way it's done is, let's say I do a sequence in. Whoops! What the heck happened there? Oh, that's Mark's screen. I was just going to say, you can, that's all right. Go ahead, Mark.
I had to stop sharing because I was muted and I couldn't find the unmute button.
Okay. Yeah, what you can do is you can open it up in a Word document.
So here's what I typed in the bottom line. That was my abbreviations on the bottom line. And then I copied all the calls and pasted it in here in the top. And that's what Taminations exports.
Right. Yeah. I'm just saying that for some of the older school callers who rely on their shorthand to be able to read quickly while they're calling, and that's just what they're used to, is their shorthand.
Yeah. And
it would be handy for them.
Yeah, and this is what I was saying earlier. There's a difference between shorthand and abbreviations. And there's a lot of callers. I remember Jack Lazar used to use his shorthand was the different symbols and everything else on the keyboard. Like he'd have $T for swing through and ST for star through and SQ2 or SQ4 for square through 4. Things like, I'm not exactly sure what he used, but things like that. He'd use the greater than, less than side for heads, or draw out what he wanted to do that way. The problem is what Jack would use, Dick couldn't use, but Dick has a set of shorthand that Scotty can't use, but Scotty uses a different shorthand that Brian can't use.
Yeah, but I don't read, so I don't care.
Which one, but which one is correct? And the answer is they all are correct until you start working with another caller. And if that caller doesn't understand what you're saying, then it's no good. It's the same as Fazar. It's just a description for callers to talk to other callers to make it easier. When you get into that situation, you've got to make sure that you have a commonality. You're absolutely right, Brian. It would be a function, and that's something that you can actually talk to Brad about. Is there a way of copying that? Like if you go copy, you might have a second button, copy ABBR, so it copies both. I don't know. You can talk to Brad about that. Personally, like I said, I don't use abbreviations. I'd rather type it out longhand and then see, because it just cements it in my mind. And to me, if I see ST, I'm always thinking, is that swing through? Is that star through? Is that square through? Is that,
Yeah, well, my general feeling is that the people who are writing their own abbreviations and their own little cards like that, they're using checkers. They're not actually using Taminations.
Yeah, and that's why they do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you can also use, if you're familiar with Word, or if you use WordPerfect, if you're an old fella or that kind of stuff, once you paste in the full, you can always use the replace function and just go right star through ST, copy it out of your export and just do a replace all with, and it'll change it over for you. But again, you have to be familiar with another computer program and so on and so forth. There's workarounds, but if there's something like that, that's a function that you think is something that you want to use, talk to Brad. And there's usually two possibilities. Yes, I'll do it, or no, I can't do it.
Oh yeah, I've had Brad change a few things, things that I like to do that just were not possible before and now are.
Yeah, well, like I said, 6 months ago, you could not do an Alamo ring. Now you can. Even though it was in the definitions and showing the definitions and how they work in Taminations, you could not do an Alamo ring in the sequencer because it wasn't set up to do it. It is now. Anyway, that's a lot of information. That's going through the basics of Taminations, and that's what I talked to Mark about. And now let's play with Taminations if anybody wants to look at anything. Or first, I guess, is it's been a while for me to do this. Has anybody got any questions or things they want open for discussion? Yes, Jeff.
You're muted, Jeff.
You're muted.
You're
Jeff.
muted, Jeff. There you
Yeah,
go.
there we go. Yeah, Brad is constantly making a long list of things that he'd like to fix up. For instance, just a week ago, I said something about head ladies chain 3/4, side man's turn with an arm around, which is legit choreography. He said, yeah, it's something I'm aware of. I've added it to my list. I'm not sure when I'll get to it. So he's constantly changing things and improving. Thanks.
Anybody else?
I was gonna just say that I actually use a different program, a different computer program to write my choreography, and it doesn't even have an input abbreviation feature. But I'm one of those guys that has all the abbreviations for reading, like you were talking about. And so what I did was I went and wrote a separate program so I can take the output of the output and then run it through this program, and then it turns it into all the abbreviations for me.
Yeah. And Chris is very knowledgeable on computers. And like I said, there are programs that do that. I don't have a program to do it. I would do it one by one with the copy and replace function in Word. But if you got a program or an algorithm that does that, that makes it happy, talk to Chris. Have Chris talk to Brad, and Brad might incorporate that into his program somewhere along the line. Any other comments or questions? Yes, Steve.
I missed about the abbreviations by copying and paste them into Taminations. You can also, if you decide you don't want them in there, you can go and hit the reset button, and it'll put the default ones back in there.
Yeah. Steven, you had your hand up.
Yeah, how did you do that where you did the parentheses for a call and then
Okay.
the
Let me share
the description again to get to and then
okay, so let's say I want to do heads square through, swing through, boys trade. Okay, so I want to do, I don't know, a right arm turn 3/4.
okay.
Okay. Right arm turn 3/4. Oh my God, the call's not there. Whatever can I do? So what I'll do is I'll put, that's what I want to call.
Mm-hmm.
I put that in brackets. So it will see how it's on the line.
Yes.
It's in white. It doesn't have a program assigned to it. Doesn't have any timing assigned to it, but that's what I want to call. Now I tell the caller, or I tell the dancers what I want them to do. So what do I want to do? A right arm turn 3/4. So 1, 2, 3. Great. So I know that I can use a call that they haven't been taught yet. Let's just say cast off 3/4, or
Cursor,
I can
Daryl.
do. I can see why Daryl gets frustrated with that. Cast off 3/4, and there it is. There's my right arm turn 3/4.
Okay.
Okay. So I can say cast off 3/4, and then I wanted to do boys run and promenade. So let's say I was doing a singing call and this is what I wanted to do. Oh, that's not going to work. So if I do boys run and promenade, it won't do that. Dancer 5 must wheel around with a partner. Who's dancer 5? 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh yeah, okay. He's got to do a wheel, or she's got to do a wheel around. It's telling me it doesn't work. So I can go a cast off 3/4. I can boys run. Oh, that's not what I wanted to do. And I can tell it all sorts of different things that I want the dancers to do that right arm turn 3/4. So what did I want to do? I do a boys trade. So if I do a right arm turn 3/4, 1, 2, 3. No, I don't want to do that. What I want to do is I want to get everybody facing to their corner. So I would write turn through to corner. Let's say that I'm just doing this as the end of a singing call or something. It won't do that. So I put that in brackets and I would say what?
Oh, turn half, hinge or turn half.
Okay. Boys run.
Okay.
Okay. And then I just give myself back to singing call, swing, corner, and promenade.
Okay.
Okay. So now when I copy this, I want to copy this, let's just say with a comma. Copy. I've got my Word document. I paste it into my Word document. I go, okay, head, square through, swing through, boys trade. I want to turn through to the corner, because that's a directional call, because some of them have to turn 3/4, others only have to turn half. I know I can get rid of this.
We're not able to see your Word.
That's weird. It says I'm sharing.
It was still Taminations.
You're probably just sharing that application, not your.
There we go. Now we can see it.
Okay. So let's just I'll get rid of that. Okay, so I've copied it. When I paste it into my document or on my cue sheet or my worksheet, I go head, square through, great, swing through, boys trade. Let's say I'm writing a singing call here, just as an example. Don't worry about the timing. Now, I want to turn through to the corner. That's how I want to end it. And Alaman left come back and promenade, or an Alaman left swing and promenade. I know that couple number 1 or man number 1 has to turn 3/4, but man number 4 only turns a half and then reaches into the corner. So that's a directional prompt. I can get the dancers to do it by typing in those actions, but I'm not going to call that to the dancers.
Right.
I'm going to go back to my singing call and I can swing the corner. So my whole thing now looks like that. The computer won't do that. That's just how I can create the fudges.
Okay. Got it.
And you can do that with all sorts of things, like on the swing through from an Alamo style, swing through twice, meet your partner, box the net. You have to actually tell them to quarter out to get to facing dancers in order to do the box the net and a wrong way grand. So you would put box the net in brackets, and then you would write quarter out, back to singing call, box the net, hold on, wrong way grand. And that's how you would write it.
Got it.
How does it figure quarter out from an Alamo?
It uses the definition of quarter out from the Alamo style, which is the facing directions of where the dancers are, and out would put them face to face with each other. Because on the left-hand side, the girl.
Which direction is out?
I'll show you.
You have a left hand wave, you have a right hand wave. It's an Alamo.
Okay, so which way is out for the girls? Which way is out for the boys?
Well, that's from a squared set for sure. There's
Yeah, hang
clearly
on, hang on.
clearly a center and an end.
So yeah, so which way is in, which way is out? That's a quarter out.
Okay. And are they facing their corners?
No, because what if I do swing through, swing through? So in her left hand, if she goes to the left, that's towards her partner, because her partner relationship would normally be on the girl's left-hand side. It would normally be on the boy's right-hand side. But because he's got hands with the girl, this is the way the computer, and like I said, this is all the computer programming. It took a while for me to figure this out as well. If I do quarter in, guess what? They turn back to back. You would think quarter in would be the common sense one, but because the dancers are in this fundamental position, half sashayed, even though it's a mini wave, it's a right hand mini wave, so it's a 0.5. I have to quarter out to get them to turn their back on their relative partner.
Well, this is a good example of knowing what the definition is.
That's
And
correct.
so the question is that really the correct definition, or is that just what the program is doing, which may or may not be the correct definition?
Yeah. In that goes back to who's your partner in an ocean wave. And in an Alamo style, who's your partner in the ocean wave is totally dependent on what the next call is. So the computer has to build a relationship. So it will go to the relationship based on the original position, which is the man. His partner is on the right, generally in a normal formation, and on the left for the lady for a normal formation. So because the ocean wave has them facing different directions, if I look at this one, let's just
the whole thing of calling Alamo swing through and box the net is actually not technically correct at all, right? Because if it was box the net, they would end up with a ring of people in the middle, and people, they'd be facing dancers, but they wouldn't be oriented around the outside. There'd be people in the center ring facing out and people on the outer ring facing in. But people will call the box the net, and what they really mean is swing through, but don't quite finish it, or do a little extra and now box the net. I'm not saying I object to that. I'm just saying.
Okay. Now, if you had the girls turn back and everybody take hands, they'd be in an Alamo ring. But if you have the girls turn back from a squared set, they're not in an Alamo ring, they're in mini waves. And the quarter out changes because I don't have a relative occupation of a space with the dancers on both sides. In an Alamo ring, I do. And this is where you get into what is the technical definition. The answer to that is it's a Color Lab issue. So we talked to the committee at Color Lab, which will form a subcommittee, which will create a commission, which will do a study, and then they'll conduct a theological seminary. And in 16 years, they'll redefine who your partner is in an ocean wave based on an Alamo style. And then it will go up, it'll go into the quarterly review for the ARC, who will make a decision that all callers will adapt until the following year when the ARC changes because someone else comes up with a new definition, and we go through that process. And in about 60 years, we will have a clarification, but that movement will now be on the C4 list. And that's how square dance definitions work. I saw your face grinning there, Bill or Dick. So I think you probably recognize that as more true than not. And Chris, yes, you're absolutely correct. This is at the beginning, I said it's absolutely important that you as a caller understand the definitions and the mechanics of the movements that you are calling. I would love to see Brad set Taminations so that when you choose calls, it can only do movements off your lists and the directional prompts that you give it. So if you only called a plus, then that's it. If you do SSD and nothing else, those are the only movements it would accept other than directional prompts that apply to SSD programs, such as turn your partner right all the way to the corner or whatever. And I would love it to stop taking movements from A1 and et cetera, et cetera. It does this now because it's still necessary to prompt and because Brad has not isolated that. But I think it would probably be a benefit to the program if it is isolated only to the program you call. That's just a
Yeah, I would love to see that.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
And the mechanics are already there. So if you know enough, like if only one person says, hey, I'd like to do the abbreviations listed, copy them as abbreviations. If that happens to one email, Brad will probably send you a reply saying, this is how you can do it, but I'm not going to change the program. But if you get 20 or 30 people saying, hey, can you look at these lists? And when you tick a list, that's the only programs that can enter back into the program. It won't recognize the rest unless I tick that box. He gets enough requests on that, he'll fix it or he'll change it.
Okay, Mel, I found a thing that didn't work and I found a cheat to get it to work kind of. That
Okay,
will
is my,
work with your
my
kind of thing.
screen still on?
Your screen's still on. Yeah, so
Okay.
we'll just do it. We'll show you. So do a Alaman left in the Alamo style. Perfect. And then just type in quarter through. Okay. And then the next call is all 8 spin the top. I found this and I thought, oh, well, this would be really cool to call. And then, so this works, which is fine. Now from here, the thing that popped into my head was ping pong circulate and you're home. But you can't do it.
And it's saying you can't do that. So here's where you would go.
You would say step ahead.
Nah,
Yeah,
hang on.
you do a ping pong circulate. Yep.
That way
So
I know
then
what I want to call.
Yeah, you tell them to step ahead. And have the boys slide right. And then partner trade. And then everybody's home. It's kind of cute, but again, it's sort of a the program can't do it right now, and you could probably ask Brad to add that in there. Although I think ARC says that you can't do ping pong circulates from there, anyways.
I don't think you can.
Well, you can. ARC says
sorry.
you can't.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, that's what I mean. The applications review committee said no. It's like doing spin chain through from an Alamo ring. You're
Right.
not supposed to do it. It's technically wrong. But then again, like I said, I just re-recorded the Chaparral Always on My Mind, which was Jerry Haig's version. Now, within that, he uses a grand spin. Oh, you can't do that because it's not on the list. Well, yes, you can do that. It's just a workshop movement. You can do ping pong circulate from there. It does meet the definition parameters other than the starting formation. So it's a gimmicky call. It would be a workshop movement that you could have fun playing with a night. It is not a dance by definition movement because it doesn't technically meet the definition because it's restricted in the starting formation. It's the same with spin chain through and all those other kinds of things. But if you're going to use it and the dancers have fun with it, guess what? You're not wrong. Just make sure that you're explaining it to them. So
Yeah, but
Roz,
when you ask Dawn, who wrote the call, he says you can. So I
Yeah,
trust Don.
but Don also wrote Ferris wheel, and that wasn't the way he had planned it either.
Yep. Okay,
Um,
I gotta take my kid out to his 21st birthday dinner. So see you guys all later.
Take care, Brian.
Take care, Brian.
And like Roz and
Brian.
Scotty, you guys call SSD to your group, correct?
Yes,
Yeah. So can you use spin the top on at your club?
we can't use it in SSD, but I guess you could walk it through, but you
Why
can't.
can't why? Yes, actually, you can use it at SSD. You can use ping pong circulate. You can use spin chain and exchange the gears at
As
SSD.
long as you don't name it that way.
It
You
is
have to
no, you
use
can
it.
even name it that way. You were right the first time. It is an introduced call that would be workshopped on that night for use on that night only. And if you're going to use it the following week, you reintroduce it as a new call that's not on the program. It's being workshopped for this night and this night only.
Right, yeah.
Well, I
But
think
if
a
you're
better
just-
way to say that is that you can't use it at SSD, but you can use it at your dance. And if your dance was advertised at SSD, you can't use it unless you teach it. But if it's a
No,
dance,
what I
I
said,
mean, you
can
you
you
can
use it
teach
at
anything
your?
you want at your dance, but that doesn't.
That's right.
But now,
What I said was,
now the dance
can
program is
can you use
SSD
it at your
plus.
SSD club?
Yeah.
Yes, you can. You can use any movement you want, but if it's not on the program, it's a workshop, and that's part of the SSD guidelines. It's the same
Well,
as
I mean,
part of the mainstream guideline, and that stands. And Chris, you're absolutely correct. That's the same for any dance group, any club. If you're going to do a big open dance and it's an SSD format, if that format has a workshop, afternoon workshop or something, and all the callers agree that that's the movement they're going to workshop, fine, you introduce it as a workshop. You wouldn't really have to, but you cannot just say, right, it's SSD, I'm going to call spin the top anyway. And you're absolutely right on that, Chris. What you can and
I mean, you
can't
can call
do,
anything you want if you
absolutely.
teach it.
That's right. And
We classify it as a disposable call on the
Yeah.
night.
and what the issue is there's many callers in the States that I've talked to, and a couple in Canada as well, that have been using the SSD program, and they teach SSD, and then they add the mainstream calls, and then they add the plus calls, and now they're a plus group. So they're not doing SSD. They're just rushing them through the basics of SSD and hoping to fast track them in. That's not what the SSD program was designed for or anything like that. And they're not workshopping it as a disposable call. And what Chris said is a much clearer way of explaining it than what I said. It is a disposable call. If it's not on that program list, don't use it unless you workshop it and it's for that one time only. Even if you call it every week, you introduce it and you reworkshop it every week if you're going to use that call, because you never know who's going to walk into the door of your SSD club and has not done that. Doesn't matter if your club's done it 20 nights in a row. If it's not on the program that you're advertised, don't use it unless you workshop it. It's that simple.
That's common sense, so really.
Common sense. I wish there was a lot of that.
Mhm.
And if you get someone new
Unfortunately-
coming in that you don't know, you're going to call some easy stuff first to assess them, or unless, because they might be weak dancers, and
Yeah.
you might
Well,
have
the
to adjust.
problem is there's been callers that have been calling now for almost 50 years, like Dick and Jeff, myself. And unfortunately, in the square dance world, there was only, when they created the activity back in Henry Ford's day as an organized activity and it went through, they only created a limited amount of common sense to go around. And unfortunately, we used up most of it. So there's not a lot left for the newer callers these days. That's my theory. I'm sticking to it.
I recently posted a thing that my wife found about a Cherokee Indian who he wrote a poem for his favorite square dance, and this was back in the 1800s.
Mhm.
It is absolutely hilarious. You'll have to. It's on several of the caller
Yeah, I
sites.
saw it.
It's absolutely hilarious. Some of the calls, and you can picture what they're doing, but it's just hilarious. The stuff that they used to call, and it's like, really?
Yeah. Well, it's essentially that is Ask your partner to dance, get on the floor, make a square, bow to your partner, bow to the opposite lady, heads go forward and back and swing, sides go forward and back and swing, Alaman left your corner, swing your partner, promenade home.
Right.
That's not what they're told to do, though. Grab that heifer swinger high and low and off to the left, all sorts of things like that.
Watch your cussing and all that.
My thought when I read that was I would probably get beat up before the end of the night with that one.
Well, it's a really good example of what's actually going on. And we as callers, yes, we have to be very, very specific in what we actually say, what we actually do, in how much we're actually going to represent ourselves, what we're going to actually say to dancers on the floor, all that other kind of stuff. But we also have to balance that. And as you said, common sense has a lot to do with it. For instance, if I said, "Hi, ladies and gentlemen, I'm your caller for tonight. My name's Mel Wilkerson. Don't want to offend anybody, but I like women that wear the dresses really, really tight. They wear their clothes tight. They bleach blonde dye their hair. They wear way too much lipstick, way too much rooms, and basically are really trashy and like to swing their hips and flirt. So that's how I'm going to treat you all." What do you think the dancer reaction would be?
We've got no dancers left. They just walked out.
Yeah. But if I got up.
Yeah, but the ones that are left.
Yeah, true. But now, saying that, every one of those people that got offended, if I got up there and said, "Sides face grand square, I like my women just a little on a trashy side. They wear their clothes too tight and their hair is bleach blonde dyed. Way too much lipstick, way too much rude. That kind of girl leaves me feeling confused, but I like my women just a little on a trashy side." Very popular country song. Too many callers would say, "I'm not going to use that because it's offensive." They would be absolutely wrong in that. Because I've used that at high schools, I've used that at open dances, I've used that at club dance, I've one night stands. It's a very, very popular song. It's a well-known song. It's got a good beat. I think it was a Gary Shoemake song. Yeah, Chaparral, Gary Shoemake, because Tracy's just asked me to re-record that one. But when you look at these songs, you have to use common sense. Now, a lot of you probably know the rodeo song. It's 40 below and I don't got a heater in my truck and I'm off to the rodeo.
I got that 30 years ago.
And so on and so forth. Now, that song is full of profanity, full of words that should not be used in public. It's a fun song to sing, but it's a drunken beer song. It was done by a group that put it out as a profane shock song. That one I would never call it a square dance. Again, this is where common sense comes in. Just because you have a song that talks about drinking alcohol doesn't mean you can't use it. Just because you're asked to call a dance at a function for the Atomic Energy Commission annual party and it's being done at a big festival convention center and they're serving alcohol, oh my God, I'm not going to call that dance. Well, that's your choice. I would go and call that dance because those have been some of the best times I've ever had. And if you're giving them a good time, chances are they're not going to be drinking that heavily anyway. They're going to have a drink when they go back to their table, socialize, laughing, but they will generally have a good time. Doesn't say you're not going to get the one or two that act drunk and stupid. Deal with it. But go to where they are. Stop being prudish about it. Stop being lampshades and frou-frous. And guess what? You're going to get a lot more dancers having a lot more fun with the activity than we have right now.
It's funny you brought up the rodeo song. When that first came out over 40 years ago, I took a copy of it to my square dance caller that taught me to square dance, and said, "Joe, here, take this home and listen to it. You're not going to want to see it, but it's hilarious." He brought it back the next week. He said, "Yep."
Yeah.
So I got a Christmas song a few years ago and I was practicing it and I practiced it for a while and I got really good at it. And I was going to do it at a Christmas dance fundraiser that I was doing. And then all of a sudden I was singing it and I got to paying it. I really started paying attention to the words and I thought, no way. I am not going to do this song at a square dance.
What song was that?
This one, Let's Make Christmas Merry, Baby. Let me be your Santa Claus. I want to slide down your chimney and fill your stocking full of toys. That's repeated a bunch of times in there. And then, yeah, I'll come around about midnight and fill your stocking full of toys. I'll let you ride on my reindeer. You won't need no hobby horse. I think those are the main things, but I was like, nah, I can't see doing that at a dance. Not with the people I square dance with, because that comes across the wrong way.
That's right. And that's where common sense and judgment, that there's no difference in that than there is in walking into a hall and starting off your first tip nice and easy, moving the dancers to see how they move to the beat of the music, what the acoustics are like, what the hall's like, and what kind of floor reception you have. Because that's where your caller judgment comes in. And you know your group. Now, there are some groups that you might be calling to. You might actually do that song because it would probably be a lot of fun for that group in the right situation and the right occasion. And there's a lot of things. For instance, if I'm calling a dance in Qatar, I may not want to do God Bless America again. But if I'm calling a dance in Texas, I may not want to do Merry Christmas from Allah. You know, it's different kinds of things. Common sense and judgment goes a long way. Unfortunately, there's not a big supply of it anymore. I blame Dick for that. Roz, you got your hand up.
Yeah, Mark, I mean, even if you don't like the lyrics to the song, there's nothing, you can change the lyrics, write your own. Because I didn't have many Christmas songs. So I changed a couple of songs to Christmas songs by writing my own lyrics for it.
Oh yeah, I've done that.
So that way, if it's good music and good tempo, but you just don't like the words, just adjust.
Yeah.
How about
few songs?
How about this song? There's an elderly person out of control, is taking too much medication and alcohol, and goes out partying and staggers, gets hit by a car, and we're going to celebrate her death anyway. Does that sound like fun? Grandma got run over by a reindeer. You can take lyrics however you want them.
Yeah.
You know? How about this one? Hello, poor parents. You are really bad looking after your children. The weather outside is horrible. And what you're going to do is you're going to secure that child in a high place blowing in the wind, knowing that she's going to fall to her certain death because it can't be supported on the material you're securing her to. Yet we sing that to our kids every night. Rock-a-bye baby in the treetop. It's all about common sense and logic. You can make anything an issue or you can just have fun. And chances are, if you're going to have fun in the right context with a little bit of common sense, your dancers are too.
No, you're great.
Anyway, back to Taminations. That was it. Mark, I want to say thank you. I know it was short notice, but I did want to go through that. I figured it was probably good to have a refresher on all the little background functions of Taminations. Go in and have a look at it because it's so much more than just typing in calls and watching the dancers move or writing choreography and looking how many beats. Yeah, I can do that. You got to know your basics of calling. It is only a tool. Taminations is not for writing choreography. It's not for solving choreography. It's not that kind of a computer program. It is, however, one that is good for checking the flow, but you have to understand the movements. For visually looking at what is the rough timing of this, but again, you have to understand the movements and the mechanics of the movement. And it's good for checking out, does this sequencing actually work? Am I getting into the right-hand quadrant at 44 beats of music for my swing the corner and promenade? Or do I have to, if I'm in the left-hand quadrant or in the home quadrant and I'm doing a swing the corner from head, step, and face your corner position. Okay, I need to be at 40 beats, allow 44 beats for the swing, and 18 beats for the promenade. It can check all of those things for you if you know how to use it. But you've got to know how to use the program. Otherwise, you end up with these figures that are 30 beats long or 70 beats long. And either one of those will be of issue to the dancers.
It's also
30
good for, it's also good for your pattern too. If you've got pattern sequences that you're thinking of, and you want to make sure that you're moving all of your dancers around. And by using that paths in there, you can see, well, I've got that side lady's really not getting anywhere. She's pretty much just staying right there.
Yep.
You know, you want to get, when I went to first color school I went to, they told me that the ideal pattern is to get everybody moving around in all 4 quadrants. So they're going all the way around the floor, not just staying at home or on the left side. And by using the paths and Taminations, you can see what they're actually going around doing in your sequence.
And see if you're winding someone up as well.
Yeah, now somebody sent me a message. Oh, she's gone now. Et, I think is how you say her name.
Yeah, Et
Uh,
McIntyre.
she told me something about she uses SD, and let me see if I don't remember what she called it.
Yeah, it is SD.
SD.
No, something that she does with SD. Okay.
Use SD. Maybe I can guess if you give me some more hints.
She says, I check for overflow or bad flow by making them all roll, and that tells me dizzy or overflow information.
Yep. Yeah. If you have them roll, if they're moving in a right-hand direction, and you say just do with an and roll at the end of each call.
Mm-hmm.
If every call you has an and roll and they're always turning the same direction, then chances are you may have an overflow issue.
So SD tells you that you've got overflow then, does it?
Yeah, that's the way it sounded.
It sounds like it, doesn't it? I know SD does a lot, but Taminations doesn't.
I never noticed that feature, but here, I'll just try it.
I wish Jeff had used that and roll on some of his choreo.
Share it, Chris, so we can see it.
Yeah, Jeff uses SD all the time, or he used to.
Yeah.
But it's more difficult. All it does is show you the starting and ending positions. It doesn't show you the flow.
No. But obviously it uses add and roll at the end to check the flow, and then deletes and roll.
Yeah. There are a number of different programs like Colorama, for instance, when you can either talk the calls or type the calls in. If you have a flow issue, it's either a bad flow or a good flow or an overflow. It now has a little color code indicator that will tell you that you've got a flow issue. It's not always 100% accurate, but it is a good indicator. Most of the things where you have multiple right-hand turns or sudden contradictions of turn, like star through zoom, is a good example of what is considered bad flow, although it was very, very common because it's a massive directional change. It's a forward left followed by a forward, right? The same kind of action you do on a swing through, but because of the cramping and everything else, you have those sudden change of directions. Touch a quarter followed by a zoom from a column. Even though that doesn't have the cramping, it is also a problem because of the sudden direction flow. Constant right turning. Here's a sequence from a pattern. Sorry.
But Chris, this is using SD, is it?
Yeah.
Because Jeff also had one called SD Reader with his SD, and that
Well, you put the
actually
same
showed a set.
commands in, but it shows you the movements the starting and ending positions.
Yeah, and it showed like the dancers or
Yeah, and that's what these little arrows are for.
yeah, but he had SD reader with it that as an addition to it.
Yeah, that's him, Jeff,
Which
and
I haven't
Ron-
got. I've got SD, but I haven't got SD
Yeah.
reader.
Yeah, SD Reader is a different program. Jeff and Bronk Wise used to get together all the time and workshop different bits of choreography and whatnot as well. Yeah. So what are you actually showing us here, Chris?
Using it.
I don't know if you're talking, but you're muted.
Oh, yeah, I was saying I don't see any flow detection features in this program, and I didn't think that it had any. But
Okay.
so
using
I don't know that it does that.
Okay.
Now, I think there's a few people that have used that when what they've done is they've gone back and they've added an and roll to all of their text just to see if they were constantly turning in the same direction.
Yeah, I did that.
Right, didn't tell you. Yeah.
I did that earlier here, and it was it didn't do anything.
Okay.
I added like 3 rolls, and I tried cast off 3/4 and hinge and hinge and hinge and roll and stuff like that, and it didn't do anything. It just, I mean, it did it, but it didn't.
No, it will do it. The program will do it. I think.
Yeah, but
if
I'm saying
if I remember the
explain.
comment that Mark was making earlier was they'd look at and roll, they'd put that after each movement, and they'd analyze it in their head. Okay, square through and roll, touch a quarter and roll. Okay, that's a right hand turn. Split circulate and roll. That's another right hand turn. That's another right hand turn. That's another right hand. Okay, I've got way too many right hand turns going on.
Oh, I
Here,
see.
a good example would be here. Have a look at this one. I'll share my screen here with you.
Yeah, I thought SD was actually putting up a warning.
Have you still got your screen shared there, Chris?
Let me figure out how to unshare. How do I do that? Let's see.
Stop share.
I don't have the button anymore.
I think it's at the top right of the screen.
Oh. There we go.
Yeah. Okay. Screen 2. There we go. Okay. So let's just put that back onto settings. Put that on normal. Okay. So here's a sequence, as Mark was saying, patter. Head square through, touch a quarter, split circulate, boys run. Everybody square through 4, center square through 3 while the others trade, pass through, trade by, slide through, pass the ocean, circulate once, boys run, partner trade, Ferris wheel, centers pass through, Alaman left, and you're home. Yep, they seem to be moving all over the place. There's good flow there. They're traveling around. There's good flow there. They've got a lot of floor covered. So I'm checking all the flow features that are in there to see what's going on. But this is where a lot of callers have to also look at what the dancers are doing. So let's start by looking at the number 1 man. Does he cover a good portion of the floor? Yes. The only place he doesn't get to is this number 3 position. So that's okay. That's considered usually pretty good. But count the number of right turns in a row that this person does. And a right turn in a row, even if they do something with a forward action like a Ferris wheel or a circulate, if the next call is a right turn, that's added in the flow. So let's count the number of right turns this guy does in a row. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16.
I'm glad he picked on the man, not the woman.
17, 18, 19, 20, 21. Oh, there's a left. Now, even though that doesn't seem like bad flow, every man is doing that same flow. Now, could you picture doing that? I know that's a lot of
halfway through.
Okay, now let's look at the ladies. Okay, What has she got for left? 1, 2, 3. There's a right. A straight. 1, 2, 3, 4. Right, straight. That's okay. There was a pause action there. 5. At least she had a pause with hers and a left. 2. So the lady's action is not actually that bad. She had 4 right turns, but there was broken with a straight movement and a pause. But for that man, let's just say that was a singing call, one of the old-fashioned singing calls where you got 90 beats of music, 4 sequences of 90 beats of music and no middle break. Would you like to dance that as a guy?
I'd be sitting out the next tip because I'd still be dizzy.
I can guarantee your right shoe would wear out before your left shoe would.
Is that why one shoe wears out more than the other?
Sometimes. So, and this is what we're saying. So if I can do, okay, roll, 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 roll. Almost every movement on there, other than the straightforward flowing, is a right hand roll. There's no left hand turns to break that up. And although there is a straightforward action, there's no sideways, like with the lady, when she does 2 in a row, she's got a right hand or a left hand sliding action to break up that flow.
Mm-hmm.
And those are the kinds of things that you as a caller need to look for. And that's what Taminations is actually quite good for, is checking that. And you don't just check the number 1 man and the number 1 lady, you check the head men and the side men. And you do it for all of them, because sometimes, depending on what your choreography is, even if it's symmetrical, it might be number 1 man, number 1 lady, number 4 lady, but number 4 man has got something completely different, or number 2 man has got something completely different, you know, just because of the way it's set up. Another thing to look at is you do 2 figures, 1 for the heads, 1 for the sides. So if you've got a breakup like that, in this case, both the men were going, but if you've got the ladies have a left hand flowing action and whatnot, but you got to remember that it may look good on the first one, but if you do one of those heads, side, side, that lady was doing the head lady position, then she's doing the side lady position, then she's doing the side lady position, then she's doing the head lady position. If you vary it, and that can have a big change on your flow and your dynamics as well. So that's why when you're doing a singing call, you usually go heads, sides. Don't try and be clever, like, which is very popular in the heads, sides, heads, because the ladies end up doing the same thing over and over all 4 times. They don't get that break. You know, and that's the little things in common sense that callers have to be aware of. Mark has posted the abbreviations, his updated abbreviations in the chat. So take a chance to download that, or take the time to download that. I've also put Brad Christie's email in the chat. So if you don't have his email, just copy it. So if you have, because I don't know if it's on there anymore. He's in the help at the end. He said, just contact me, but he's taken his email off the bottom of that. So I'll have to let him know that. And I think really that's about it, unless anybody wanted to talk Taminations or had any questions.
I just checked in the SD documentation, and as I thought, it claims that it literally knows nothing about timing, body flow, or aesthetics. So that's so I don't think SD has any features to help you. It doesn't have any trails or anything like that. It only knows, you know, starting and ending. That's all it knows.
Yeah. And it's one of those, it should be able to program the call, and then it'll give you a written description, such as 4M with a facing arrow or 4L with a facing arrow, to tell you what formation they're in. It's very much the old method of dosido.com, where the notes and directions were written on a typewriter for production on a mimeograph machine for caller note distribution.
Well, there's 2 versions of SD, and the one I use is not the graphical one, so it just draws the dancers with the little you know, the little up and down things. But there is a version that I think the normal Windows version has you know, the same kind of icons that that
Yeah,
Tamination
graphic
has.
representation of the dancers.
Yeah, the normal
Yeah.
thing.
And that's just SD only, is it?
Hmm?
You don't
Yeah.
need your SD reader. You don't need SD reader.
No,
with it.
no. SD Reader is a separate program that comes not from the people who make SD.
Right.
They've taken SD and then they've tried to add some stuff onto it, and some of it works and some of it doesn't, but it's not
Yeah.
officially part of SD. But the
Okay.
normal SD program has icons and a menu and that kind of thing. The version I
And I
use
bel-
is one where you just have to type everything, and it's you know, just like a typewriter interface.
And I believe
Right.
some versions of SD also, unless they all do now, you can, what do I want to do? It'll give you options to resolve as well, various resolution
You can
options,
anytime
stuff like that.
you can just hit the resolve button, and it'll come up with it'll go try to find a quick resolve for you. And if you don't like that one, you say find another, find another, find another, and then eventually you say give up because I hate all those and I see a better one right in front of me.
Yeah. Yeah, I think they were looking. I don't know if it's ever got, because I don't use SD, but the last discussion I had with Jeff, they were looking at, you can say resolve with and give it a movement that you're focused on, like resolve with spin chain the gears.
Oh, I didn't
Or
think
something
that
like
might. If it does that, that's something brand new.
Yeah, well, it's some. I was talking with Jeff, and he was talking with Bronk Wise, who was sending me a few of these kinds of ideas, and it was something that they were toying with, and it was a suggestion that was made to see if that was possible. The downside, and that's great. The downside of that is there's going to be a lot of callers right now, and a lot of them have dropped off Facebook. Many of you may have noticed that in the newbie callers. There was a lot of callers there for a while that were coming out with some really weird and wonderful choreography because it was being written off computer programs rather than with common sense and logic. And just anecdotally, and this is no word of a lie, it got to the point that there was some newer callers that call up to the C3, C4 level. They've been calling for almost a year, and their club asked them to call because that's where they danced at. And they were giving advice and tips to other new callers like Johnny Preston on how to do singing calls and how to write choreography and stuff like that. And I don't know if any of you ever heard of that new caller, Johnny Preston, but he has been around for a little bit. But this other caller was telling him how to correct his body flow, and this would be better, and he could try different things. And on his singing call presentation, you may want to try. And let's just put it this way. A lot of people didn't comment on his comments, and it got to the point this guy was actually very nastily correcting Johnny before he even knew who Johnny was. And yeah, that happens a lot when people write off computer programs.
You do have to be
So,
careful.
yeah,
I
it
know
was
Jeff wrote some interesting
Yeah.
stuff, but
it was
then
so
some
blatantly
of it was
horrific.
hard
It
to
was
dance
actually
to.
funny. Yeah.
Mm.
And that's when Don Beck was one of the original pioneers of some of the computer programs. And I think he did one of that at MIT for a master's degree or something like that. Actually wrote a square dance computer program.
No, you're thinking of Clark Baker and his bachelor's thesis. Don didn't go to MIT. Don,
Well, I know Don wrote a computer program way back when.
he did. It
And
was a very interesting thing.
yeah,
It was
but
there was a programming system that was on earlier Apple computers called HyperCard, and what it would do is you could it would let you draw a picture on a card, like an index card kind of thing, only on a computer, and you could draw, you know, circles and squares and all the things you would need to make little pictures of dancers or something, you know, little icons, and so he and what the program would let you do is let you link cards together. So you could draw a card that had a squared set, and you could label it squared set, and then you could make another card that said heads past the ocean, and it would have a picture of that. And then the program had a way of sort of manually linking these things as though they were hyperlinks. This was before the web, so before people knew what a link was. but that's basically what it was. It was like going. It was the way it was written was essentially a big giant network of hyperlinks going between these different pictures cards, and so the program it couldn't do a huge amount of choreography, only whatever intermediate things that Don thought of. But it was quite an impressive program for for the technology that it was, and the fact that Don, as he explained every single time anybody saw this thing, is not a computer programmer, and all this stuff. And HyperCard was actually invented for that, to give people who are not programmers the ability to create things like that. And so it was a really cool little program. It was a cute little demo. I mean,
one of the big thing, the axioms that Don came up with in the development of this is one that a lot of callers forget, that it is just a representation of what can be done from this formation with these people in this, and it would link this movement. Can I do this from here? Yes or no? And it's just an on off. So you could link, as you say, different things, because start, finish, the finish of one is the start formation for the next. And of course, we can all see the big fundamental problems with that. Flow, sequencing, all that other kind of stuff is not accounted for. Heads square
it would be
through.
possible to write a program that keeps track of those things. There's
Yeah.
no there's no reason you couldn't do that. I mean, there's no reason you couldn't do that in 1975, but
Yeah.
but nobody's done it.
I don't know, when I write something, I'll write it and then I'll check it on Taminations and then see what everyone is doing. Exactly what you said earlier, Mel, checking each person. So, but also when I write it, I'll try and see it in my head as well, and maybe dance from those positions.
Clark Baker's bachelor's thesis, which was, I'm not sure exactly what year it was, sometime in the late 70s, I think, was a program that that generated sequences. So you would just tell it, write me a sequence, and it would make one up for you. And one of the main things that came out of that was his observation that writing a program, that the flow is really important, and that writing a program to keep track of it is really hard. His program being sort of an abject failure and lesson in that. But that was the Baker's program was maybe the earliest calling program that I know of anyway. He had a much fancier program circa 1981 or somewhere around there, that that was you had to have a very expensive computer, like a $30,000 computer, to run it on. But I guess later he managed to port it over to a PC and sold it for a while. And I'm not sure if it's still available or not, but that was it was that was probably the first real calling program, that a checker pushing program intended for people to use. And that was pretty popular for a while among people who could get access to it. And then until Bill Ackerman came along and wrote SD.
Yeah. This is one last thing with Taminations, with SD, with Colorama, anything? Follow this sequence. Now, most of you should be cringing about now. And this is why you have to be real careful with computer programs. Are they using the floor? Yep. 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 But square through,
Does
right
it know
hands
anything
free.
about hand availability?
The
Yeah,
hand
so
from
square
hand.
through 4, right hands free. Let's do a left square through.
Mm-hmm.
Let's do a reverse wheel around followed by a flutter wheel. That's no quick direction change for the ladies. Left touch a quarter with a boys run followed by a pass the ocean, followed by a cast off 3/4, followed by a diamond circulate, followed by a cut the diamond. Those poor boys. The rest of it's not so bad, but
You know, there's
you're right.
another bad phenomenon with computer programs, especially the ones we see this a lot with SD, because SD really knows how to do a lot of things. Most programs are they essentially have a bunch of tables that tell them what you can do from here, and here's the answer. SD doesn't work that way. It actually computes what's going on in a sense. It's not thinking about it the same way what's in the dancer's head or anything, but it actually computes what it's going to do. And so it'll handle more or less anything because it doesn't have any pre-programmed ideas of what are the things you can do. It actually knows how to calculate the outcome of one call given another. But anyway, the point is a phenomenon we noticed with once people were able to get a hold of the SD program is the phenomenon that we refer to as clueless clicking. And what that is you're sitting here in front of the thing and you're writing your sequence, but you don't actually know maybe the definitions of the calls. Or at SD, which is focused on challenge, applying certain concepts to calls and, all the different things you can do with, messing with the calls of challenge. And so you would get people who would just clickety click along. They'd say, pull up the C2 list or the C3 list, and then they just start picking off the menu. And the menu updates each time. It only shows you the calls that are possible at that point. Unless you tell it I'm going to do something weird, in which it just says, so well, just tell me what it is. But normally each time you do a call, the menu that comes up is here's the calls that are available, which is usually quite a few calls. And so you could just click and construct a sequence that way of calls that can legally follow one another, but you wind up with really bad, really stupid choreography. And moreover, then you go call that, and well, you don't actually know what those calls are. You just saw them on the menu, and they were written down on your thing now, and you're reading it to the dancers, and you're hoping nobody notices that you're calling way above your level. You don't even know what these calls are. You just got the names off the program, and it said it was legal to do one after the other. And so that's another danger that comes with. And by the way, challenge dancers are very good at detecting that sort of thing. And you're not gonna have a lot of success trying to employ that strategy, but we see people doing it, and it really could be done on any of these programs.
Yeah, you won't be able to do it for long. Just as a note, that one caller that I was talking about was one that was actually doing that with his programs. And that's what he thought. There was a long period of time where callers tended to judge their essence and their functionality and their status of being a caller in different categories. One was, I'm a caller because I love the status of being known as being a caller. And they just wanted to be a caller. And I know through the late 70s and the early 80s, callers associations were a very big thing. To be a caller, you were a member of a callers association, which meant you paid your dues to the callers association. That was it. That was the only requirement of being a caller. You paid your dues to the local callers association, you were a caller. some of these callers may do one singing call at a party night once a year, like the Christmas open dance, but they were a caller, and they were known to be a caller, and they had caller on their badge and all that other kind of stuff. There was other callers that they were complete readers, and that's all they did. And there's nothing wrong with being a reading caller. Reading is a very legitimate calling form, but it takes a lot of practice to be a reader and to be a good one and to be a good reading caller. And there are still a few good reading callers out. And as Chris was pointing out, at the challenge level, there are a lot of callers that are readers. But that said, those callers actually know what the heck they're talking about too.
Yeah, reading is a whole it's
a skill set.
It's it's and a lot of people can't do it just because they can't read that fast. But
yeah,
I see people who read from time to time, and they're not good readers, and they think they are.
Yeah, one of the advents that came out with computer technology is what I call the karaoke callers. And there's a lot of karaoke machines. There's a lot of karaoke programs that you can use, which are very similar to square dance programs. And I've run into a couple of callers that are karaoke callers. And what they do is they program their choreography to their singing calls as karaoke, and they have it scrolling across the screen, and they're reading, basically calling to the computer screen as a karaoke song. And you know what? That's reading. Absolutely nothing wrong with that, if what they're doing is entertaining the dancers and they understand what's going on and they're able to watch the floor.
That's not too far removed from
problem is
what we traditionally do.
Many of them. Sorry, go ahead, Chris. There's a bit of a time.
I was going to say that karaoke caller that you're describing is not really too far removed from the traditional way that a lot of callers started.
That's right.
Memorize the singing call like it was a song.
That's absolutely correct. And patter calls used to be the same as well. Traveling callers in the 30s, 40s, and 50s used to go around, and they would have their special signature thing that they would travel around, but they would go and they would usually go to a dance or go to an area, find out what's being called locally so that they knew what was going on, what was familiar. And then they would have a meeting with, say, if they expected 100 dancers at the dance that night, well, then they would have enough for 10 squares, and they get 10 couples in and they teach them the new dance. And those callers, those dancers, those couples would be couple number 1 in each of those 10 squares at the dance, so that there was at least enough of them, so that, and the sequence used to be couple number 1 do, couple number 2, couple number 3, couple number 4. And they do that sequence in the first one, and couple number 1 would lead it, then couple number 2, then couple, and that way they do it. The next one, you know, you'd have your couple number 2s would be in the number 1 position, and they would lead it, so that by the end of the dance, all 4 couples have led it. They've all done all 4 positions. It's all familiar. They may have changed the theme of the music, but the choreography would be the same. And it's a very, very good sequential learning system that a lot of these new dances are introduced. And you would go along and people would produce records like this. And then we got into sight calling and modular calling and everything else. And of course, the whole world changed as of the very early 50s and into the 60s and 70s. So it's not wrong. There's a lot of callers today that love karaoke music, and they strip the lyrics off of songs, or they just buy the karaoke version of a song and they use that for their calling. I personally don't. I personally don't like that, because most of the karaoke music is not structured for square dancing. Some of the music makes fantastic patter, I'm not going to lie, and some of the songs make fantastic singing calls, and some callers are very, very good at modifying that. Unfortunately, there's a whole bunch of other implications that go along with that. You can use karaoke music for karaoke. You cannot use karaoke music for square dance calling if you're charging admission to go in and use that, because the karaoke music has certain copyrights, unless you've gone through that copyright licensing. Some places in the state, some local associations have gone through that. I'm not going to get into the technicalities of copyright, but it is something to be very, very careful of. But what I have noticed is, and what I've talked to three callers in particular, they said, oh, this is great. I got this karaoke version of this song, and I played with it in Audacity, and it makes a great pattern, and they're sending it out to everybody to use as a pattern. That's an absolute no-no. Because one,
I discovered a cool feature just like yesterday or whenever it was. This is on the Mac on iTunes or Music or whatever they call the music program this month. They're always changing it around. I don't know if it works. It might work on the phones and the iPads too. I'm not sure. It probably does. Oh no, actually no, it was on the iPad. Yeah, so it definitely works on the iPad. And the so I'm playing just regular songs, not square dance music, just regular songs that I have on there. I was just listening to music. And I accidentally hit some button and it turned it into a karaoke. What it did was it figured out without having to do anything ahead of time where the voice was, and it lowered the voice way, way, way down, so it's almost, almost all the way gone, so that you can sing along with the song. And so you didn't need to go buy any special version or run it through any program or anything else. It was just part of the music player. And that might be good for something.
So, Mark, you're sharing the karaoke version of Boy Named Sue, correct? Mute. Unmute. Mark's the technical wizard, which is sad but true. When I was running these sessions, he was my technical wizard and he's forgotten more about how to manage these things than I will ever know, trust me. But Zoom is constantly updating and the features change where they are and all that other kind of stuff. But there are versions of this. And like I said, there's nothing wrong with having a prompt up there. There's nothing wrong with having a screen up there. It's no different than if you have the lyrics of your singing call up there, or if you have a sheet of paper or a cue card and you've got it down on the table. And I still do this when I'm programming. I'll have that down there that I can quickly look down and look back up at the dancers just to refresh in my mind what I want to do, or if there's a special sequence I want to use or a special formation I want to get to for a get out, I can quickly look down. Okay, oh yeah, okay, pass the ocean, extend. Good, I can do that. I can do great. A trade by, slide through, reverse Dixie style or whatever, swing through and blah, 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 blah. Look at a glance and I can go back to watch my dancers and get them through the sequence. Nothing, absolutely nothing wrong. That's a combination of systems. Sight calling, I'm still an advocate. There's absolutely no such thing as 100% pure sight calling, because every caller that sight calls knows a resolution or a resolution technique. They know flow modules. They know things that work together and don't work together. But they're able to put things together consistently by seeing the dancers and having a system in the background, whether it's mental image, whether it's sight calling, whether it's paired couples, that will lead them to a resolution sequence, and they can see multiple sequences that it seems like absolute magic. There's mental image calling, where you're tracking a dancer through systems of crosses and knots to say, yes, that's in sequence, no, that's not in sequence, and I can recognize one of the 4 Alaman positions to get them resolved, usually within about 3 movements. And there's all sorts of other techniques. There's, crams and multiple techniques and everything else. I'm an absolute believer that the absolute 100% best system that every caller should learn to use is the one that works for them. Because once you learn a system and you make it yours, start at the basics, you've got some place to build from that you can come back. If you want to start with a resolution system and you learn friends and enemies, then stick with that. Use that over and over and over and over until it's firm in your head. And you can always do it 100% of the time. Now you've got a foundation to build from. Now you can take the training wheels off and start riding the bicycle and go different directions, because you know that no matter where you go, you've always got a way of getting back to where you want to be. But it doesn't matter what system you use. Whatever you use, it's the one that works for you, that you're comfortable with. Master that first, then branch out. Whatever calling program you use, we're talking about Taminations. If that's what you want to use, know what the program can do, know even more what the program cannot do and how you can correct things, and then use it as a tool. Don't let it become the caller and you're the tool just giving a voice to the dancers. It's got to be the other way around. And that's really about all the simple advice I can give. It's no different. I'm going to steal a bit of thunder here from Dick, because I think hopefully Mark is going to get you to come and talk about Hilton products. But if you're going to buy a Hilton product, don't just buy a MA220 because you saw Tony Oxendine using an MA220 at a convention and he said it was a good machine. It is a great machine. But it doesn't matter how good the machine is, unless you know how to use it, how to use the parts. You've got the right parts. You can buy an MA220, but if all you got is a couple of Radio Shack Boom 3 speakers, guess what? Your system's still going to sound like crap. Is Radio Shack even operating anymore in the States? I don't even know that. So, but I think you know what I mean. So there's a lot that goes into every aspect of calling, be it your equipment, be it your choreography, be it your training, be it your microphone, be it whatever. You have to know your tools. And your hardware, the physical equipment, is one set of tools. It's very important to know, just like anything else. Anyway, that's all I've got on Taminations. On various other discussions. I usually,
Mel,
sorry.
I've just got my Hilton. I bought Jeff's.
Oh, good.
Of him, so I've got his Hilton and his Jack Stacks. So. Which is good, because at our club, we've only got the little, what one is it? The record player, John?
I think you've got a 75 at yours.
Yeah, it's only a little one. So now I've got the MA 150. So yeah. I can get used to that, because that throws me a bit when I'm at dances, because I don't use that at club. But it is basically the same as a record, really, without the record player.
Yeah, I know. I could never fit my record. I could never fit my records, because the records that go in the side of my computer are only this big, and the records I got are this big.
But also, we've got
how many of you know what the difference is between Hilton sound and a general sound system?
I think
No.
It's in mono.
Sounds like,
okay, number one.
Sounds like you got the basis of a presentation right there, Dick.
Yeah. Number one, what's the most important thing about calling? The dancers have to understand you.
Yes, clarity.
Voice.
Yeah.
The mid-range.
And so Hilton sets the mid-range of the music is suppressed. And the bass in the microphone is reduced. That's why a Hilton set sounds different from any normal audio system.
Yep. What was I think the best example of that is Calgary at the Stampede grounds, the massive Olympics. You've got this massive sound system that's there for the Olympics, and then you've got a caller with a Hilton. I think he was a 300 or a 500. I think it was a 300 at the time. And he's got the dual amp going, and he's got his speaker set up, and he's got better, clearer sound in the Olympic Stadium than the Olympic sound system has. That tells you that if you know how to use your equipment, you know how to get the best out of your equipment.
Yep.
I've got a Hilton. Sorry, I was going to say, I've got a Hilton. I've got two sets of Yaks, and I never separate them. I've got my Hilton, and I had a 300, and I have been in some of the most horrific halls in the world. I have never had a hall I have not been able to sound. There was one I did have a challenge, that was in Petawawa, Ontario, and it was a solid steel construction with hard brick and a high metal roof with arches. And thankfully, I was in the military, and the Canadian Airborne Regiment was there, and they decorated the hall with parachutes. And that helped a lot. But I've never not been able to sound a hall with a Hilton and two Yak Stacks. And most of the time, I don't need to. Sometimes you do, but not always.
A good thing, something you said about knowing your equipment. I remember, I think it was Caloundra for the National. They paid someone $5,000 to set up the hall and do the sound, and he lasted one night. And they sacked him and got the callers to do it.
Yeah.
He
Well,
wouldn't listen, he didn't know what to do.
You were at the convention in the Blue Mountains, weren't you?
No.
No. If
No.
you were, I think it was the New South Wales convention, actually. We were going to have the Nationals in the blue. Yeah, the New South Wales
Yeah,
convention.
no, I didn't get to that one.
It was like, don't get me wrong, it was still a good dance, but the person that was doing the sound did not understand how to do sound. And even though it was done, and one of the callers there, what the heck is his name? Cox.
David Cox.
David Cox.
David Cox.
David, thank you. I couldn't remember his first name. It got to the point, and he made a point. It was a gimmick call, but he did his stuff, his singing call, with no music, intentionally, because it was literally that bad.
Bad.
It didn't. He was making adjustments. He would adjust things. Wouldn't give the caller the volume control. You know, all these other kinds of things that the caller needs to make those adjustments once they're experienced. And I can understand with a new caller, but usually they'll have a mentor up there that knows that caller's range and capabilities and able to do that because they've worked with them. But when you've got somebody sitting on the floor behind the speakers, not able to hear what's actually being sounded out on the floor, adjusting the sound so it sounds good for him, sitting in a booth behind a barrier, behind the speakers off to the side, it just didn't work. And there's all sorts of things. I don't really want to go into the sound and setting up speakers and all that, because I'm hoping that Mark is going to sweet talk Dick in, and he's going to double the amount of money that he's going to offer Dick that he's already offered. So he'll double it, and if Dick's really nice, Mark might even triple it.
Yep, I was thinking about quadrupling it.
Well,
Nothing.
the worst hall that I have ever been in was the Olympic hall that they did the basketball for the Olympics in Munich.
Oh God, yes.
And it's a good thing that better than half of us that were there were camping, because after Friday night, we all brought our sleeping bags and spread them out over the railings to help reduce the echo.
I was going to say that was the blanket party square dance.
Yep.
Yeah. If I remember that correctly, and this is only anecdote, I was told about, I wasn't actually there, but by the end of it, you had blankets and patchwork quilts and sleeping bags and everything else hanging all over the quilt. It looked like a refugee camp center from a flood thing that everybody was drying their bedding and sleeping bags out inside the hall.
Yep.
And there were certain parts of the hall, I don't know if I remember this correctly, but I was told there were certain parts of the hall that everybody wanted to get on the floor first so that they didn't have to dance in that part of the hall, because some of those sleeping bags had not been washed in a while.
Hadn't heard that part of it.
Yeah, the worst hall I had was down at the Gold Coast. It was a round hall. I think it had about 10 sides, and only 2 of them had wooden panels. The others were all glass, no curtains.
More like a terrarium.
Yeah.
But that I can actually understand the confusion of that, because, you know, most calling is done by men and most calling is directed by men towards men. Women have a hard time with that. And it's been that way forever, because, you know, that's what, you know, even if you go back to the book of Genesis in the Bible, you know, there is a woman for every man in every corner of the world. And that's why God made the world round. It'll come to you.
If you're thinking about it.
Oh, that's terrible. Anyway, I want to say thank you, everybody. It was good to see you all again. I know I don't get in as often as I can. Mark, thanks for letting me contribute today. And especially thank you for keeping these running. I know it's been about 1.5 years, almost a year since I stepped down. And enjoy my retirement. We're moved into the new house now, and all is good.
Great.
Yeah. And, you know, settling down. So I'm still doing some recording here and there, and, you know, some mentoring and some advising. And I try to get in as often as I can, but not as often as I used to. So I'm going to have to get going. But thanks, everybody. and we'll see you all later. It's good to see you again, Dick. I think it's
Yep.
been what,
Bye, Mel.
15 years, 15 years
Nice
or
to
more
meet
since
you,
I talked to you.
Cheers,
Thanks
guys.
again, Bell.
Thanks, Mark.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Yep.
I'm going to
Cheers.
shoot off as well.
Thanks, Mel.
Thank you, Mark.
Yep. Have a good night. Oh, dang. Dick jumped off of there already.
See you in a fortnight, Mark.
Okie doke. Hopefully it'll be with Dick Bull next time. I was going to ask him, so do you actually want to do it next week or? No, but he jumped off of there.